So one of the points of AVA Futures, it started out as a group primarily focused on the younger element within the vending industry. But we've reshaped that, and working with Jason Vincent, who's on the board and has sort of helped us steer this, and with the return of Kennedy Warwick as well to the business. Futures is now going to be more focused on the future. So the future of vending, automated retailing, our market. And in this instance, the intent is to look at what the changing market, the broader changing market, retail, the environment, workplace, what that means and what that impact that could have on our businesses. So first of all, we have Pascal Uffer from Boost Inc., Gillian White, our ex-chair and from CPI, now Enevent. Then we'll also look at what the implications are for payments. We have Angus Burrell from Paycomplete. Then looking at the consumer and the workplace, we have Dan Belnay from Nestlé Professional, and also some input from Helen Hewlett of CCEP. We hope this will be of interest to you all. So moving forward, we will now pass over to Pascal.
Thanks very much. It's my pleasure. Pascal Uffer. I'm the founder and CEO of Boost Inc. Boost Inc. is the combination of two companies. Used to be Boost Bar in Switzerland, which I founded, and Iguana, which Jason founded. We do everything unattended under one roof. We have a small operator in Switzerland, but mainly we develop and market technology for vending operators, but also for manufacturers. Here we have a big base in the UK. The topic I would like to talk to today is smart fridges and vending concepts. In the intro it was mentioned, and we saw it in the AVA report, huge growth of micro markets of smart fridges. I think 38% up number of micro markets, 190 more smart fridges, 190% more smart fridges, and of course not really a big surprise. Self-checkout, UK has always been on the forefront. It's become the norm. Consumers are used to be digital, and contactless is king in the UK. So all really big enablers of these digital concepts. Now, the 38% growth in micro markets and 190% growth in smart fridges, that's only part of the reality. It's actually a drop on the hot stone today. And if I just compare the numbers here in the UK, I think in terms of micro markets, you're probably one of the more advanced markets in the US. But that's why in the US, in Europe, at 480 micro markets, that's what goes out every 2 weeks in the US. And the smart fridges, to compare this to a baseline, I come from a small country on mainland Europe called Switzerland. There are more smart fridges in Switzerland than in the UK. And the question I asked myself for the presentation here, I don't want to tell you how great fridges and screens are for consumer experience, but the much bigger question is, why does it fail? So why are we struggling to roll out faster? The perceived enemy certainly shrinkage and theft. The reality is you will lose 3 to 5%, depending on theft prevention mechanisms that you employ. But most of the conversations we have with operators, they're centered around theft, and people are maybe rightfully afraid of theft, and it's certainly a topic that as a vending operator we're not used to manage. But if you really zoom out a little bit, the theft is actually quite a small part of the equation. There are different things, however, as well that place major obstacles. One of the most recurring ones I see in our conversations with operators, smart fridges often come in when people talk about selling food, and there's a lot of excitement often in projects where people put a lot of fresh food up, and you end up with the operational hassles you didn't know from your regular vending operation. Huge amounts of food waste. Here's a picture from a leading operator in Switzerland. The picture in the middle is actually from a title page of national news. So it's a concept brand that is very, very green and forward thinking, but the reality is they have 30 to 40% food waste, and you need to drive there every day to fulfill. So that's certainly second topic that stops the growth or often leads to projects where people get started with a lot of excitement, but then stop once they see the numbers. And last but not least, and we've seen even the big ones fail with that, is there's a tendency to over-engineer things. The beauty of a smart fridge and of all these digital vending concepts is it takes a lot of the noise out of vending. But then people like myself, I'm an engineer, we like to put a lot of tech in these fridges and in these concepts. And in the end, we end up with things which are more expensive, more complicated, more rigid to operate than the vending machine that we were trying to replace in the first place. And even Amazon is doing, is learning it the hard way. I don't think Amazon will disappear, but for sure, what we're seeing is there's certainly been a tendency to put too much tech and worry too little about the operator and the consumers. And what I would like to now quickly talk about is our own journey. So I was, until the end of 2019, I was the group CEO of Selecta, built up, among others, the foodies micro markets, still today the biggest micro market concept in Europe. And then I left to start off my own business. And when we started, the goal or the challenge I set myself is I wanted to only do it with modern concepts. So our entire business, which in the meantime has grown to more than 10 million revenues, is only based on smart fridges, smart freezers, and digital coffee machines. And what I will share here is not all the details behind it, but just the few principles behind what I think really made the difference between our early experiments where we stumbled and then the journey where they started to scale and make sense. So that's the example. So we have the operator in Switzerland, and this is a leg we have in Germany with frozen manufacturer. This was a concept we built together with a frozen food manufacturer. The first principle was keep it extremely simple, because these digital concepts, micro markets in particular, the possibilities are unlimited, but you still need to sell them to your customer, explain them to your customer. And coming from a world where you plug and play a vending machine to suddenly say, I build you big micro markets and fixtures, can be very, very complicated to sell, to explain. So what we did is, and what we do systematically with our concepts, we always try to keep it extremely simple, avoid variance, and make it in a way that is easy to explain to the customer, to install, and to customize. But when we say customize, really mass customization, we can use screensavers, we can adapt the assortment, but we avoid everything that creates a lot of rework and individual customer adaptation. The second thing, and I think that's certainly one thing that gets forgotten, especially once people start to add technologies, back to really what the basics of what the consumer needs. The consumer really doesn't care whether it's a fridge or a vending machine. In the end, he has a need. He wants to be able to pay. And there, I think in Europe, it's critical to recognize the local payment needs and the payment systems. There's a tendency to introduce apps and all sort of nice tools, but most people, if they can choose, they would simply like to use their card or their credit card. So that's the first thing, really understand what do people pay with and make sure that this is available, and avoid technologies that introduce hurdles here. Second thing is the consumer experience. We have talked later on as well about payments. I think one of the big challenges currently of the industry is how to make payment terminals and the vending machines talk to each other. There's lots of setups with more and more screens and more confusion. So a high level of attention on watching how the consumer behaves in front of the smart fridge and make sure that it doesn't drop out or doesn't get confused. And last but not least, I think a big missed opportunity in concepts today is if you are already going to digitize your entire setup and invest in effectively a lot of hardware, why not also have a screen that allows you to inform the customer and to engage with him? And this is certainly today also in the Swiss market, where we're an operator, a key differentiator, the ability to be able to explain the product, to engage with the consumer, allowing people to filter from nutritions rather than just the mechanical process of checking out. And then last but not least, and as the former CEO of Selecta, and I used to be in charge of more than 5,000 routes across Europe, the thing that's probably most forgotten in all these projects is the operator itself. Because in the end, you can pilot a nice concept in the HQs, and I always cynically say that probably 1/3 of the micro markets out there at the moment, they are in HQs and in showrooms and not at customers. And I often see that the question on how this will integrate in your regular operation is asked far too late. The first thing is the equipment you roll out, what's the capacity, how easy is it to fill? Because there's no point in having something that triples your sales, but you need to visit 5 times as much. How will it integrate with your current solutions? No one is interested to roll out a new ERP or a new VMS just because of a fancy fridge with a screen. And how easy is it to fill for the operator or for parties who are in front of it? And last but not least, on the theft topic, I think it's unavoidable that there will be theft. And in our experience, we're present with customers now in more than 15 markets. Every market has its own pattern. Of course, semi-public locations, universities, hospitals are trickier than workplaces. Interesting statistic in Switzerland, the worst ones are bankers and doctors when it comes to theft. But you will quickly understand in your market where the theft risks are. And our belief is it doesn't make sense, to assume that there's theft everywhere, but we roll out technology that is flexible. And in 90% of the cases, having a fridge with a checkout and a lock is enough, and we're theft below 3 to 5%. And only on sites where we do have theft issues, we then add extra technology, which does add complexity, does add cost, but at least allows us to serve all of these sites. But the most important thing really is not the technology, but it is a new operating model that is far more dynamic than a vending machine. You need people in your teams that look at data, that engage with the customer. And with that, we've seen it in a lot of geographies and operations. It's feasible to hold it at a level that is acceptable. And our opinion is 3 to 5% is acceptable once you take into account the benefit it brings in terms of revenue uplift. And that has been our approach that has worked very well for us. The last but not least, I think many people in this call will have had their first experiments or have rollouts ongoing. The question is always, how do we get started? And these are usually the 4 steps. For me, the most important thing is don't rush ahead and add 50 unattended smart fridge concept in a catalog, but pick an easy win. And I think any technology partner will be able to look at your customer base or your operations, and together with you come up with locations which are highly likely to benefit from it. In our case, our easy win were these fresh food vending machines in hospitals. We systematically managed to get 250 to 350% sales uplift by replacing them by a smart fridge. And our first location was really focusing on this one easy win and avoiding to spread ourselves too thin across a lot of customers. The second thing, and that's back in the days, Iguana was a supplier and not part of Boost Inc. We really sourced the partner and not the fridge. A lot of the technology we use today wasn't finalized yet when we started rolling out, but the reason we worked with Jason and his team was what we wanted to build and the expertise he brought was aligned with our roadmap. And I think that's a key question here is, of course, there's lots of options out there, and not every every operator will have a different profile and different needs. And I encourage to talk to all the players out there because there's a lot of innovation coming up, and in the end you want to have a partner on the journey and not just a fridge for your first rollout. And then the third one I think is key. Your first pilots, run them outside your operation. So we always recommend to single out 1 or 2 people who take care of the newer concepts, because it is a big change for regular operators, and you want to have a successful pilot before you scale it up. And then when you scale it up, key is integrated with your existing systems. I've seen many cases, including in Selecta, where great concepts, all the benefits were in the end eradicated again because they weren't integrated in their existing landscape. That was it from my end. I'm happy to take, I don't know if we have Q&A or take questions here.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Pascal. Well, what we'll do is we'll roll any questions on. If anyone has anything particular that they want to ask, if they want to post that in the Q&A section, and then we can look at those. Interesting in terms of the overall numbers, and you mentioned about the increase we've seen in the UK in terms of both micro markets and smart fridges. I mean, we've got I think about 6,500 micro markets across Europe. We've got a quarter of those in the UK. But we're still a little way behind the US, who've got 76,000 across the US, and a huge growth over the past sort of 3 to 5 years.
Let's move on from that. First of all, to David and the AVA, thank you for inviting me to talk for a few minutes, and not too long, I promise, about what I see as next for vending. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm younger than Hero, who was around in the 215 BC apparently, but I'm older than the internet, as the current meme goes. Having worked in a number of businesses with which you're all familiar, Mars and Crane to name but 2, I'm now an independent industry consultant. I've done my time as chair of the AVA and historically the EVA, and I'm really knowledgeable in the vending of snacks, drinks, coffee, equipment, and everything in between. When I'm not geeking out about vending, I'm probably running, weightlifting, fitness instructing, or raising funds for Naomi House, which is a children's hospice very dear to my heart. So enough about me. I stopped a consumer on the way home last week after the Vendies, who was buying from a machine at Waterloo Station, and we had a chat. And this is his summary of, I don't really give vending much thought, to be honest. I probably would miss it if it disappeared, because obviously he'd bought this Coke and chocolate, which they belong together, like iced tea, cold weather, because there's no buffet on the train any longer, and it fuels me for my footy training. So you might say, well, Gillian, very nice, you had a chat, but what's the point? So what? It was really, I think that he had a need. He wanted to buy something. He was on his way home. He clearly didn't want to go into one of the very busy coffee shops, and the vending machine was there, had what he wanted, and he was able then to get on with the rest of his day. And I think that's very much at the heart of what we are about in the vending, unattended retailing world. So I'm going to take you back. I am going to, as I said, a bit of a not historian, but a vending geek. And what is vending? And I draw your attention really to the last sentence here. It's the silent sales associate with a inbuilt payment system that annually moves billions of pounds, dollars of goods to out-of-home consumers across the globe. And it's working 9 to 5, 5 to 9, throughout. It is there sort of anonymously, being that retail channel in places that are unattended, but we still have the need to buy things, and it's a very good and reliable way of serving us. So I mentioned, holding out for the Hero in 215 BC, and I bring that to our attention because I think history does inform the future, and it was great, Pascal, to see all the disruption that you and your team is bringing. But, you know, Hero solved the problem about lack of labour, portion control of holy water with available technology. And, you know, you can see there, I think he could be the bearded barista these days. But then he very much did then what we're still doing now with what was available. And you can see there, move through the 1880s of stamps and postcards, clearly very alien to us now with all of our email, through tickets, stamps, chocolates. That photo bottom left is 1923. And then I suppose the explosion of what we are much more familiar with in the 60s and 70s last century of, you know, core vending, and clearly the soft drinks manufacturers, particularly Coke, getting into that space and changing it forever. So I say nowish because what we're looking at is, when we've just talked about whether it's micro markets, nano markets, pico markets, you call it what you like, the delivery of those markets still very much incorporating technology, current screens, and you know, current payment technologies. And those are obviously growing in numbers. I'm not going to repeat what everyone else has said. Premium beverages, you know, now being able to deliver coffee that's as good as a coffee shop, you know, with the espresso under pressure, and absolutely delivering that. And then clearly many of you on this call will get emails like I do every week of what someone has seen. You know, Kylie makeup, cupcakes. David shared last week, I think, the Walker's shortbread. And it really does reinforce the point that absolutely anything can be vended. And Pascal referenced this as well, what looks like some kind of Bletchley Enigma code, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. You need to solve the problem that you are delivering. And if that's through a vending machine or through a market, it has to fit what the consumer is looking for, where they're at, meet them where they are at. And, you know, so we can get carried away. I think, you know, that was referenced. You can over-engineer things. It's like, what is the problem that we're trying to solve in that particular location? And for those of you that have a yen for vending, I really do suggest, if you can, one day to visit, you know, Japan. We have, you know, about 1 to 140 something people machines. In Japan, it's still hovering around the 1 to 23, 1 to 30. It's very revered. It's culturally very different. And you can see there, the top right is actually a used tire salesman who likes vending and has set up a market of, you know, 100 machines plus, vending everything. You've got ramen, burgers. You can see that, you know, and you can hang your head low in the glow of the vending machine in that tire place. Absolutely incredible. So, vending by the numbers. Everyone here has a hand in vending and one sort of another, supplier, operator, you know, manufacturer of products. Vending is really economically important. You know, 3.5 billion turnover, 25,000 people directly employed, and, you know, others indirectly. Again, there you've got the one for every 143 people. There's a lot of vending around, and it's a great way to access out of home any product or service you need. We can't, you know, we have a real thirst for coffee, and that I was lucky enough to hear David's presentation at NAMA. You know, the contrast between how much coffee and tea we drink is phenomenal, and we've really got that premium solution that matches what you could get in a coffee shop. For many years, we talked about this, you know, the golden era of connected machines, telemetry, and I think it's time. Not that it's hugely important, but we're not talking about that as what next for vending. It's no longer, I don't think, really disruptive. You can disagree with me, that's fine, but I think it's really how we connect those machines, how we use the data, how we use the information. And cashless is absolutely on the rise. Mobile wallet, pandemic disruption, cash still has a play, because if it's the right, you know, if that's what people have, then that's what they will use. But the growth, you know, whether it's in markets, is definitely in cashless. So Gillian, get on with it. I can hear you all tapping away. So there's 5 trends I really wanted to focus in on and kind of explain why I think these are the things that are really important. Clearly, the economy is always important, you know, and what impact that has on our businesses within the vending unattended retail sector. The environment is a very hot topic that always, has been for a long while, but very much in terms of how we approach sustainability, the environment, and the factors affect it. What we sell, I know we've got a couple of great presentations coming up from Nestle and Coca-Cola in terms of products that people are buying, but that's really, really important. Are we selling? Are we missing opportunities? Are there other, and what's coming down the pipe? Consumer experience is really, really important. And we've all been at the butt end of TV programs that vilify what we all love and earn our livings from. And I think that there's a lot that we do that can improve that perception. And there's a lot that we should do to continue to drive that, to give a great customer experience, consumer experience. And then clearly, obviously, the little robot man there, we are no longer dreaming and imagining technology. A lot of that has come of age. So we take each one in turn. Pascal discussed it about theft and, 3 to 5% through the smart fridges. But just there was an ONS report very recently, and, the highest levels of theft and shoplifting ever recorded. We understand that in many respects, but there was something that really resonated with me, which is this comment about sticking it to the man, and a lot of theft where we've moved to self-checkout and perception of you're making me do the work, and really interesting sort of psychological impacts of why people are doing that, as well as clearly economic factors, cost of living. Cash usage, this one surprised me from the Bank of England. There's a lot of cash around. Clearly it's accepted, it's anonymous, but there's a lot in circulation. So yes, we need to move with technology, and I'm a big fan. I can't remember the last time I went to a cash machine, but it's not dead. And I think we'll have some interesting discussions later today on that. Probably the biggest thing we're all experiencing in this sector is the alternative ways of working, post-pandemic shifts in demographic of what generations want and need from work, and the work that they are doing is very, very different. So I think all of those, obviously it is all about work, but, has massive impacts on what we do and what we look to invest in. Environment policy landscape is huge, and I think David will correct me, but I think it's about 37 regulatory legislative instruments that will impact us. And this is all around whether it's packaging, consumer facing, the use of, chemicals and plastics generally, and this whole thing about sustainability and protecting our environment. And that bleeds through also very often into the choices that people make of the products they want to consume. And we provide a lot of those. There's a lot of concern about how food is created and manufactured and impacting on dietary choices. And I'm sure we're going to hear about that as well. And health and well-being trends that build on that. So it's not going away. We've got an election year. The environment's very much on topic, whether it's net zero or, which obviously impacts us in terms of fuel and cars and everything else. So I think it's really one that we absolutely need to think how we execute against our commitment to looking after planet A. In terms of products, there's lots and lots of consumer trends. I'm not going to steal anyone's thunder, but, slow food, hot food, you can vend anything, jambalaya, mashed potato. It can be vended. What do people want? Is chocolate the new coffee? There's a lot of push. And if you've read anything from the guy that runs Knoop's, if you've experienced that, boutique chocolate shops as opposed to coffee and tea. Fascinating world. Not just because I'm celiac, but cost to the NHS of allergies, which are the most chronic diseases in the UK, huge. And are we not only delivering against our responsibilities to inform consumers, but are we offering enough choice to those consumers? There's a lot of consumers out there with allergies that want information, and they want to know out of home that they can safely eat. It's a bit of a bugbear of mine, but I'm not on a personal mission here. But I think that there are lots of products out there in the health and wellness space that maybe we should be thinking about, and how we get those to the consumer in our execution. And then there's obviously the whole role of social media, as I call them, fitfluencers, mixed messaging, what really is, important. So I think this one, as I said, we're going to hear from both Nestle and Coke. I think it'll be really interesting what new products are coming down, what trends are they addressing, and where are those growth opportunities? We've got the base, we've got the locations. What should we be thinking about in our offering, in our vending and unattended areas? And customer experience, consumer experience. Some facts here that you may not know. So 2003, Tesco ended their first 12-week trial of self-checkouts. And, there are a lot of them. And I think Pascal referred to that. In the UK, we're a big adopter. It's interesting how long that technology has taken to become relevant. And now the economic impact of sticking it to the man, of whether we have a love-hate relationship, but it's all part of how consumers feel about buying things. And I think that's very important for us to consider. Smartphones, digital interfaces are ubiquitous, and whether it's 3 seconds or 5 seconds, we have the attention span of gnats nowadays. So that ability to interface and have the right user interface and experience so that you don't look like our glum chum on the left there, very, very important. And loyalty, I'm sure, perhaps you knew these facts, but obviously, again, Tesco, they've just done an awful lot in terms of disrupting the retail space. But, Clubcard's been around a long time, and we love loyalty. 80%, this is the Mintel data, at least one card that they're using regularly, 20% up to 5 cards, and then there was 14% who had even more than that. And in the US, just as a comparison, it rockets to 16. So loyalty. Why do I mention loyalty? Well, loyalty increases when the economy is tough because you get to trust. And we are retailers at the end of the day, but we need data to engage and provide that loyalty so that we can upsell, cross-sell. So I think that, where vending and retail are so blended and becoming ever more so, I think that's something that we should really be thinking about. How could we create some loyalty in our marketplace? And we are, attention span of a gnat, time poor. We want it now. We want it seamless, frictionless. And absolutely, Pascal, we need it easy. Keep everything simple. Don't get so excited by the technology that we forget the experience, because at the end of the day, that chap at Waterloo Station just wanted his Coke and his chocolate so he could play football. So, I think that's really important for us to bear that in mind. And how do we do all of that? Can you still see correctly? Yep. Technology and data and AI. So technology is now. Screens are no longer dreams. If people who've been around in the industry for a while, we talked about it a lot. We saw them as concepts, and now they're affordable, they're connected as standard, and they are what people expect. With our adoption of smartphones and need to do that, and digital expectations. But again, just because you can doesn't mean you should. What is really needed in that, in the use case and the location that you're in, what do you really need? And one thing that we all really need is data, business data to run our businesses more efficiently, to be operationally effective. But also, if we turn that around to the consumer, how can we use data to potentially engage and personalize the experience for the person who's using our equipment? Can we gamify? Can we do advertising to create both passive income at the point of purchase, but also to encourage us to buy more and spend more at the vending machine? But keep in mind that all of that and all of that technology needs to also be used in a way that is GDPR compliant. So again, choose a partner that understands how that is executed. If we're using cameras to age verify or to the demographics, that's really, really important that we get that right. So, these are things that are now in play, and AI will obviously help us even further improve the experience and how we use the data, and therefore how we get better at having the right products at the right time in our solutions. So I'm not going to run through this. I think that the most important, if you were to ask me, would be absolutely this role of technology, data, and AI, but in the context of all of the other things that make up our industry. So don't worry, I haven't got too many slides. I just wanted to pose this question: is when is vending not vending, and when is retail not retail? Amazon Go has been and gone, not really gone, but is, you know, the attempt of Amazon to disrupt the big retailers has not proved as successful as perhaps they like. That's not to say that there isn't a lot of technology that can still be applied there, but you know, we need to continue to disrupt, and those blurred lines between retail and vending is quite interesting. As you can see there, Carrefour, that's in Poland, their execution essentially a vending shop. So, you know, we have always been relevant since Hero. We've solved problems, saved labor, been there at the point of consumption, and how do we continue to drive that forward in the future? So there at the top on my yesterday slide is a micro vend buffet from the 1970s. And while, you know, it was more mechanical, less electronic, it was only that because that was the available technology. It was functional and of its era. You know, cash was ubiquitous. Hot beverages were probably just wet and warm, and not, you know, not the espresso-based drinks that we now enjoy. And tomorrow, I think retail meets vending, this physical digital concept, meeting consumers' expectations of speed, quality, reliability, and technology meeting reality. So as it says there, meet me at the automat, and I'm happy to do that with any of you that are interested. And you'll be very glad to hear that that is my last slide. I've got some references, and if any of you want to connect or have any questions, we can do that.
Thanks, David. Thanks for inviting me to speak here. So, yeah, I guess I'll give a little bit of background about me. If I just flick over to the next slide to get you maybe a little bit excited about what we're going to be talking about. My background, despite the fact we're talking about cash right now, is actually in credit card payments, debit card payments, everything from bank transfers right through to cryptocurrency. And it was only just over 2 years ago now that I moved into the cash space, having realized that actually the whilst technology I absolutely love, it's incredibly important, and we've got to move with what consumers want and how technology is going. Cash, as Gillian alluded to earlier, thank you, Gillian, is not dead. In fact, it's on the decline in the UK, much more so than most other countries globally, actually. But it's very much not dead, and I believe we need to have a better way of dealing with cash, a better way of enabling businesses to manage cash. So when I joined this business, not running the marketing side of the organization, I wanted to find out more about cash. And then when I moved into this position running marketing, I thought, well, hold on, we don't really know what our customers think. We don't really know how difficult they find it to manage cash. So what we did was carry out a survey, an independent survey, to find out the truth. And the truth, I'm not going to, hopefully not going to bore everybody and talk through every single item on my slides, but there's some fascinating statistics. As you guys in vending all know very, very well, cash is still there, perhaps on the decline, but how do we cope with it? How do we deal with it in areas where consumers want to use cash? So cash usage, as you might know, was quite well publicized. Grew for the first time in a decade at the end of 2023. So 19% of all transactions in the UK were cash. I've put a stat up here. which I think is right, just to make that relevant a little bit to the overall numbers in the vending space. But it's estimated that $40 trillion worth of physical cash is in circulation worldwide, and we know from our industry in cash that in the UK we've got 82 billion in circulation as of February 2024, and that's a Bank of England stat that tells us that. So there's a lot of pressure on organisations to accept cash. It is becoming an extremely political item or agenda, and it looks as though a lot of this is going to be enshrined in law at some point, that the acceptance of cash by retailers will be mandatory. I don't happen to know exactly where that sits with vending, but I'm treating this as how consumers like to spend and what businesses feel about cash and how to manage it. So we engaged an organisation called Sapio who do conduct research. So I wasn't prepared to accept all these random figures coming from anywhere, so I wanted to know exactly what our customers thought. So we interviewed 490 cash processing organisations. All of those organisations had at least 100 employees, and we interviewed them across 6 countries. To put into perspective, cash, so 90% of all transactions in the UK last year were cash. To just put into perspective our business globally, 69% of all transactions in Spain last year were in cash, 63% in Germany, etc., etc. So we are massive adopters, as I think we all know, of technology, and the wonderful smartphone has simply increased that. Not to mention COVID, where we don't want to touch things physical. So this is massively increased adoption of non-cash payments, despite which we have seen a rise. So 67% of all these respondents to our survey were grocery, 37 hotels, restaurants, 6% leisure and tourism. So I'm not trying to pretend that these are all vending. These stats are taken from a report that we've had published, but hopefully will be of some interest, and I hope provoke a little bit of discussion here. So of those respondents, I was actually very surprised at this. So 57%, so not far off, 6 in 10 of all businesses said that they couldn't ever see cash going away, but that they were struggling to make it economically viable. So what we're seeing here is that businesses aren't really looking at cash as a strategic priority. They know, many of them, that they need to continue to accept cash, but they see it as an enormous cost. If I were to delve further into the findings, a lot of the cash management processes still used today are very manual. An example of that would be a retailer that I know quite well, who has 6 people. It's a grocery retailer. I won't, and I'm not able to tell you who it is, but they have 6 people in every single supermarket in the UK manually counting cash in a back office, and there's no real need for that given the technology that exists. So what we're looking to do is understand how people are managing cash, why they're struggling, and how we can help them overcome that and make cash as efficient as possible. It should, we believe, be accepted alongside all other payment methods and mechanisms, giving people complete choice, as obviously a lot of people don't want to pay with cash. But some of the figures you'll see up here, which I won't talk through, apart from the organisations seeing that they lose 20% of cash's value each year, where they have 3 to 5 people handling cash, which actually isn't, even in the vending space, having that many people handling cash is not is not a big surprise. It gets taken out of the machines, it then gets counted, it goes through, and then it gets banked. So you will have quite a lot of people always handling cash, unless you look to digitize that and minimize the number of people. Not to mention that wonderful word leakage, and I'm never quite sure why we don't just refer to it as blatant theft, which the majority of leakage actually is. So if we move on and look at what we called the big question in this report is, how is technology able to revolutionise cash and help businesses manage more seamlessly the cash that they're taking? The multi-billion-dollar credit and debit card payment industry has pushed people across that way, and so my firm belief is that organisations want to be able to manage their cash and their data. So Gillian referring to big data, which is incredibly important for businesses to understand what's going on. What they really need to be able to see is the cash data alongside all other data related to payment methods, mechanisms, where are people paying with cash, where should they look to accept cash, where should these organizations invest a bit more in accepting cash, and where should they be less concerned about it. So helping them analyze and look at cash acceptance much more easily and effectively digitizing that cash is where we are looking to help, and it seems to be where the big challenge is, or certainly where retailers believe their big challenges in understanding the cash that they have in their business and trying to manage it. In terms of small businesses, speaking to a colleague of mine as I guess an anecdote, that the cost of cash is and can be pretty big if not managed properly. And I haven't put it on here, but there's a photograph I was sent from one of our technicians who was up in Huddersfield at a cafe, and there was a sign written by the shop almost begging people to pay with cash because the cost of accepting credit and debit card payments was the equivalent in a week to one member of staff's salary for a day. So 7 days equals of accepting card equals one staff member's salary. Clearly that's not going to be the case for all businesses, but it does give you an idea of how doing things manually can cost. And stats show us that the cost of accepting card payments across the UK last year was £1.2 billion. Was the cost to businesses of accepting card payments overall. So however we accept money, there is a cost. We've just got to try and minimize that and rationalize it across these different payment methods. So what are the strategic priorities that these businesses have? So increasing customer satisfaction should be an obvious one, I hope, to all businesses, and increasing efficiency. And this is where a lot of them felt a little bit left behind. So they didn't really know how to make cash more efficient. They didn't know how to make the management of it cleaner, to make it much smoother across accepting cash and getting it into the bank, or indeed, as we would refer to it, as recycling. So using the cash they've accepted to deliver back to consumers as change. A lot of these organizations have part automated the reporting, but not that many of them, in my view, have fully automated. Even those where we say 27% have managed to entirely automate it, I still wouldn't call that entirely automated when I look into the detail of it. But we're getting there. These are, bear in mind, larger organizations. So for smaller businesses, perhaps vending organizations with devices all over the place, perhaps that is minimized somewhat. I don't have the stats on that. Again, topic for discussion and perhaps of interest. I believe, and David et al., you'll be able to put me right on this, but I believe from the AVA's stats that last year 28% of all vending machine transactions in the UK were cash payments.
That's
so
true.
Thank you. So, which I think is really interesting, and still, that the fact that more than the average number of transactions across the country were used in vending, presumably means that this should be considered reasonably important area and something we should look at quite seriously. So, what are the coping strategies that these organisations then have for managing cash, and how they're planning to cope with cash? The reality is that a significant percent of them we found were planning not to, despite the fact they acknowledge there's a challenge with cash and that they need to accept cash because a lot of their consumers want to. They're sort of ostrich type approach, it's quite often actually we're just going to encourage consumers to pay with card because it just makes it much easier for us. So it's we're going to almost ignore the problem rather than looking for and trying to understand ways that would be suitable for their business to accept cash and to manage the cash themselves. So there should be, and I believe is, probably a slightly different strategy for all types of business, but there are many ways of automation, and much like in the vending space, retailers can have devices of ours and competitors who I obviously won't mention, but they can have devices and solutions manufactured by us, built by us, which allows consumers to just put their cash into a device which prevents manual management of cash. It prevents leakage. It means that everything's instantaneously digitized, and retailers, large and small, organizations can see exactly how much cash they have in every single device and redistribute that. And whilst slightly ironically, as an organization, we naturally partner with huge global businesses such as Loomis, the cash in transit business, G4S, Brinks, etc., and many others. Part of what our technology serves to do is actually reduce the cost of cash in transit businesses to retailers by giving them full and complete visibility of what cash they have where, so that they can then redistribute that across their business. It's really using technology in the best possible way, and I must add, doing that alongside credit and debit card payments. So my view is, if you want to make a payment, often, whilst I reasonably seldom have a lot of cash in my wallet, I might want to get rid of a fiver, but top up the rest with my card. Now, with our fully integrated solutions, both in vending and in non-vending retail, we provide organizations with the ability to do that. So I can part pay with cash and part pay with card if I wish to do so. And it should be noted that actually a lot of separate research alongside this, and we're going to be doing a sequel to this, where we interviewed the businesses here. We're actually going to be interviewing consumers. But what we know, certainly across Europe, is that the 18 to 24-year-old demographic uses cash more than 60 plus, which I found absolutely fascinating and incredibly surprising. Part of this is naturally due to budgeting, and that's part of the reason, again, as Gillian alluded to, I think post-COVID, that cash in the UK has seen a rise. People are budgeting, times are hard, but there's also a notion around data capture, people's security of their own data. Why should the big banks be looking at what I'm doing? How vulnerable is my money in a bank? There are all these sorts of questions that people ask, particularly as we learn more and more about hacking into all sorts of government banking systems globally. So I think that there are a lot of concerns that people have. How can we help? I won't belabor this point. I think I've already touched on that. So we do champion the cause of organisations accepting cash. There's no question about that. But we also, in fact, I'm just launching a device which is potentially suitable for vending. It's a self-service device with embedded cash and card payments alongside each other, with a full touch screen, so it can be unattended or semi-attended, and that highlights how important we view all types of payments, not simply cash. But getting cash right is tough. Cash can be very manual, but ultimately it doesn't have to be. Although if retailers, apologies, are not accepting cash at all, then they will be most likely missing out on a reasonable chunk of business that they could otherwise reap the rewards of. A bit like Gillian, we've gone for a sort of new approach to old problems. So here's our caveman and dinosaurs on his electric scooter. Please do scan your smartphone right now onto that QR code and download the Cash Chasm report. I'll be telling David how many of you have managed to download it over the next couple of days.
Got to James Birch. This, I hope, will be a reasoned round table discussion. There are one or two points I want to raise as we go through, a little less like some of the political discussions that we've seen recently. And this will be hosted by James Birch, our guru from some of the various payments and technical committees. I hope you're with us, James. You need to unmute yourself. I hope he's around. But while he,
yeah, I'm here, David.
Great. Thank you very much, Jim.
Yeah, can I turn my camera on now?
Please do.
See,
Yes,
I've got to get the technology. You've got to keep the technology simple, haven't you? Otherwise, people just can't. There you go. Otherwise, you can't use it.
I mean, I suppose, bearing in mind some of the things, the discussions that we've had, certainly around payment. I mean, what we have to bear in mind is that 7% of UK adults are unbanked and therefore can only use cash. Now, in fairness, given the focus of what's been for our members in the past, where 75% of the turnover has been within business and industry, that is where people are less likely to be unbanked. But as we've seen from this year's census, that has reduced to 55%, with a lot more on the go vending in terms of retail, travel, and sort of leisure. So therefore, and healthcare. So this is where people are more likely to want to need to use cash. But we also have the point that the average price of a vended cup of coffee is 45p. That means that there are some places where it's only 20 or 25p. Essentially, those of us who are over 30 are apparently less inclined to use our phone for something that's under 50 pence. So therefore are used to using cash. So that's one of the things which our members, and came out very strongly from our AVA Live discussion, is that cash is likely to stay, but technology is developing. We see that with payment by app, QR codes, huge method of payment as you get towards the Far East. Even seen some bitcoins and different technologies as we move forward. But we've also got the changes within the technology within vending machines. So at the moment we're using, someone will correct me, MDV version 4 or 23 or something. It's 4, says David. But that is a technology which is very fixed to vending, but is it going to develop? Is it going to become more PC based? So hopefully that's sort of some of the topics that we can cover. If anyone has any questions, again, just pop it into the Q&A, and we'll draw you forward, and we shall pose it to our panel of experts here. Sorry, over to you, James. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, we certainly. I liked Angus's presentation on cash handling. I've spent quite a lot of time, probably the last 15 years, arguing against cash. So
which I had too, James.
Yes. And I can remember going back to my good friend, the dearly departed Roger Williams, and having a conversation about 20 years ago, where he was lamenting the fact that the post office were no longer going to take the cash that he was trying to cycle through his coin mechanisms, and therefore he thought that he was bowing to the inevitable that these confounded card systems were going to come into the market and run everything. So I thought that was quite an interesting lecture. One thing I was going to ask Angus, and sort of like with some pickup here from Gillian and her bit about the environment, was whether anyone ever comments on the environmental aspects of handling 300,000 tons worth of coins through the economy, and whether that's ever been flagged or featured, or that's just something that's never a consideration, really.
Yeah, well, absolutely. It doesn't seem to be something that's much thought about, but clearly, I mean, we not just on the cash acceptance side, but we manufacture devices and components for everything from mints globally, national mints globally, all the way through to small retailers and devices, and it never seems to be something which is picked up. The only thing I would say about cash is if it's not overly electronic, then presumably you're not using as much electricity, which means that you're globally very friendly. But yeah, that I think is probably an argument which is a bit thin.
The amount of megawatts used to send that card transaction.
You can always recycle your coins and notes, but you know.
Yeah. I remember doing a presentation previously on behalf of the AVA. I found an interesting stat that said the French mint at the turn of the 20th century had decided to try and mint their coins in aluminium because they were lighter. This would make it easier for people to recycle them. So it's sort of been in vogue for 100 years or more. So
no, Jim, I don't think it does get much discussed because it's just the wheels of commerce. It's just not saying that it shouldn't, but I don't think it's not as obvious as some of the other, environmental savings that people could make. But it's an interesting question.
I think one of the things I can recall from having canvassed operators is that Angus is right in as much as coins, particularly for people on low incomes that are trying to manage budgets, still tend to be quite a useful tool, a useful way of managing their expenditure. So I think that's one area where they do play a role. But as the amount of cash has dropped in vending, one thing that comes to mind is whether or not, should we say, the big dogs in vending, that like the likes of what used to be Mars Money Systems or the various coin manufacturers, whether or not they're actually coin mech manufacturers, whether or not they're still providing the same level of products and the same level of support, whether there's still the same level of coin servicing companies out in the market, and whether or not over time those companies are scaling back their operations, and it's therefore becoming more difficult to maintain your current stock of coin validators. Last week, Jim, at the Vended,
just on that, I mean, there are less overall vending machines within the UK market, again looking at this year's census. So logistically, there will be within our membership there will be less coin mechanisms. Now, at what rate those are replaced and kept in, again, back to the census, and if you're a member, you can get this free in the members area of the website. Sorry, it's less than 10% are purely cashless in terms of machines.
One thing that's interesting, if you look at Europe, UK is a bit of an exception in the way they use cash, because you're one of the most cashless countries in terms of penetration, but you have the highest share of machines that still accept coins, because the thing you missed out on, which all the classic vending markets are on, Italy, Spain, France, Switzerland, the whole DACH region, is they're all collecting cash at 1 or 2 units on a site and transporting them on employee batches and then paying cashless at the stations. And it's also the solution we apply. So if anyone thought, we're going completely cashless, that's not 100% true. We're still, taking up the unbanked, but either it's via the reception, where our customer can pick up the notes and then load it to the customer's account, or selectively, if you have a site with 20 machines, you have 2 or 3 sites that do accept the cash, and then it's transported. And I never understood why the UK skipped that step. Maybe because you were ahead of time with cashless, and you never had the pain, right? Because you had contactless UK with the Olympics 2012. You were quite early. There's only the Nordics that was quite ahead. In Germany, it's now slowly starting, and it's really hard to transport them. But that could be an intermediate step, right? That you concentrate the cash acceptance points. It makes everyone happy. I mean, that
Pascal,
yeah.
You mentioned in your presentation that you have to recognise local payment needs or means, and the thing I suppose I'm picking up from that is, if cash is something which is used widely locally, then accept that fact and build it into your
but
equipment.
I try to avoid putting it into the machine, and in most markets we're in, there's either a caterer that can act as a cash pool, and then I accept the employee badges. So it's Legic
Okay.
or MyFair badges. Or sometimes we punctually have a setup where in smaller companies you have one or two people who have an access into our wallet system. So the few employees who are paid.
So in that circumstance, in those sort of slightly more captive markets, what you're adopting there is a bit of a closed site payment system.
Effectively, yes. And in two ways,
So,
either by deploying our app for those who need it, or
Yeah.
accepting pre-existing apps. And
okay,
in most what I call kind of classic vending markets, DACH and South, usually there's a closed loop app in place already. Often with the access batches. But you could do that. I mean, you could do it on UK sites easily because most people do have badges to get into their companies. So we can hook them up to our system, and then you just create a wallet behind their employee badges. And if someone really anti-digital, you could task the receptionist to take pound notes and transform them into amounts in their wallet, and then they just tap their access badge on a machine. But on a machine, on a
you prefer to avoid it on the machine. You don't really want coin input at the machine.
It adds 20% of capex. It creates huge handling costs. It invites for theft and vandalism. So if I can avoid it, I avoid it. But of course, I'm not going to lose out on a big
the problem in a country-specific manner. I mean, it's
the bigger issue. I mean, cash is one issue, right? The bigger issue is all the local schemes. You've been a bit more protected than others, but you can expect apps to come up, customers to, especially the big retailers with their loyalty apps, and having to integrate all of this. I think that's going to be a growing pain for operators because it becomes an expectation that you can connect to all the systems.
Yeah, but
you don't want to end up in a system similar to EV where you have to have 25 apps to try, like, if you're not careful, I mean that
was one of the points. I mean, we're looking at more and more payment by app. I mean, was it over 80% of us, 83% of us have smartphones, and certainly payment by phone is now the largest part of the cashless within the UK market. So is that a direction that we're likely to go down, and our operators are going to have to manage and move into that over the next few years?
Yeah, but I think it's a gift. If you look at Asia, it skipped the payment terminals, and it went straight to QR. Switzerland, Nordics, same thing. Huge share. We have more than 50% of cashless is on a banking app called Twint. It's a QR. So all you need to accept payments is a cheap telemetry box and a processor in the back. No payment terminal, no PCI certificate. I'm probably not making everyone happy who's listening in the terminal space, but the payment terminals are a massive pain, right? In
how dare you?
Yeah, I mean, SoftPOS is moving very quickly across to that anyway. Certainly seeing a lot of that.
I got the impression, Pascal, as part of your presentation, you were a bit app weary. You thought, I'd like to avoid apps where possible and just stick to something which seems to be, more common and more easily adopted. Apps mean friction.
Yeah. So if there is something what I'm not a big fan of is that there's a lot, especially in the space of these closed concepts, these smart fridges. The tendency is startups, they build a fridge, it comes with an app, and mainly comes with an app because it's much easier than fighting with MDB and cash collection and all these things. So the default, what we always say, anything we provide is compatible with any payment system, works on a vending machine. So we're not closing up against a CoinMech. We wouldn't roll it out in our own operation. App can play a role, right? In the example I mentioned before, if you need in Germany, we have it a lot with subsidies or employers provide rebates or to take up cash and put it into a wallet. But we first goal is always to accept whatever payment systems are needed locally. There's kind of the question, what payments do I need to accept so that 95% of the people don't walk away because of missing payments?
Yes, you don't want anything. You said not too much technology. Don't over-engineer the product.
Yes, yes. And unfortunately, on payments, it does often mean in Switzerland, our average point of sale is 3 different payments acceptance. I usually have a flow through. I have a credit card, and I have a twint. And my rule of thumb is I don't want to lose more than 5% of revenues. Usually I pass. I don't need the cash, but the other 3 I hardly get around. But that's an extreme, I think.
Yeah,
depends on the market.
I think technology is often. I think of it as a bit like a duck, really. It might be very smooth on the top and serene as far as the customer's concerned, or that's what you're hoping for. Underneath, it's just it's wild, it's turbulent, it's messy, and a lot of us are struggling to create technology that's viable in as much as it seems so easy to use as far as the customer's concerned.
But it also needs to be easy for the customer to use. I mean, Jim, it you know, people have to pay for things. If that becomes the friction or the frustration, sure. I mean, you know, you want people to engage with it. We don't want to give them yet another reason to think that vending or unattended retail is grim. And so we have to balance that. So if it's difficult in the background for businesses, that in some ways is fine, because if the consumer can get their product, that's actually what we care about.
Sure.
You know, and I use the EV analogy because it is really painful. And that's why they've had regulations brought in that are coming in that it has to have contactless above a certain point. There's all sorts of but fundamentally, you don't want to have to download apps just to buy one.
You don't want any barrier.
Yeah, you don't, particularly if you're having to use it in the pouring rain as well.
Totally. I mean, yeah. So
yeah.
Cash is waterproof, you see.
Well, it is, particularly the new notes now.
That's the joy
they're
of
just
cash.
so fantastic.
I can't believe I didn't say that earlier.
Yeah,
I mean, with more and more technology, apps, QR codes, touch screens, different payment methods. I mean, for operators, you're talking about, and obviously equipment itself, you've got a lot of things that have to interface and work together.
Yes.
And rarely is it as plug and play as everyone's promised.
The industry has spent 30 years trying to get MDB to plug and play, and I wouldn't necessarily say that we've managed it fully, would you?
We can plug it, but maybe not always play.
Yeah, it's getting there, but I think with MDB, I mean, I've practically made a working career out of MDB, quite frankly, but yeah, and I'll be sorry to see it go. But it may be that its time's up, but I think we have to be very judicious about what might come in its place. Is it the devil you know rather than the devil you don't? I mean, what's driving a change for comms within vending? Is it being driven by the smart screen, touch screen, image recognition PCs that everyone's desperate to fit to their vending machines in order to make them seem so simple to use?
I mean,
and the use of AI as well.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, AI, I suppose that will play quite a role in not only recognizing its consumers, but maybe recognizing the products it's trying to sell as well. But with that comes a whole host of implications regarding security of commercial and personal data. I think Gillian alluded to that earlier. And indeed, there are new regulations coming in about cybersecurity on embedded systems, and that is something that we'll have to have an eye on if we want to introduce new IoT related equipment and operations and comms within our vending machines. MDB,
you have to bear in mind is there are nearly 500,000 pieces of equipment out there, which could be anything up to, from my experience, 20 years old, and you know the rotation of this is only between sort of 10 to 12% a year at most.
Yes.
So you know,
well,
the legacy has always been a big issue in the vending
of building machines to last. As I said previously, they're designed to last a nuclear winter, and they do. They are, and that is, it's good in
it
one
makes
sense.
them very environmentally friendly.
Absolutely, but in another sense, it does then limit. How can you smarten it without having to buy new hardware when it's still got a life? So there's, how do you solve that problem so that you're not just generating new stuff that could actually just be enhanced old stuff, So I think that's a question for us all.
Okay,
I don't think MDB is, it's not very popular for the people who have to handle it, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I always have the fight when I have young developers coming in and they tell me that their vision is a world without MDB. I say, well, you could also tell me arguably the power plugs in the UK are the ugliest and clunkiest power plugs in the world, but has anyone come up with a roadmap how to get that out? You've got the chicken and the egg.
The problem you've got there, Pascal, is you should be looking at that the other way round. Why doesn't everyone use a UK plug? Because it's clearly the most safe and the most reliable form of getting electricity out the wall.
Morning still to everyone on the call. As David said, my name's Dan Balnave. I'm one of the channel managers within Nestle Professional, the out-of-home division of Nestle. It's very interesting what was some of the stuff that was mentioned earlier by Gillian. You'll see some common threads coming through, particularly on what consumers are looking for. But what we have tried to do here today is bring you a view on what is it that we think consumers are looking for, and in particular, how that is changing for the consumer and in the channel of workplace. So we will get very much focused on consumer. We will touch upon the categories that we have a greater weighting to in terms of particularly coffee, but very much looking at the broader consumer trends that we are looking at going forward in the next 4 or 5 years, and then how our business will change and resource to support behind them. So I will jump into 3 key areas. The first will be what are some of those key trends that we're seeing, what do they look like in terms of some of the key channels, including the likes of workplace, and then what does the future outlook look like. We'll start with the key trends. I think it's always useful just to do a check-in on where are we now. So the starting point of 2024. I'm sure none of this will be new news to you on the call, but just to reiterate, these are some of the elements that Nestle as a business are just looking, verifying and going, yeah, this is what is currently challenging our customers and the operators in the out-of-home market. We obviously have inflation, whilst slowing. It's still a challenge in terms of many consumers and shoppers feeling the pinch and impacting their discretionary spend. The global issues, obviously, we're all aware of those, but the impact that it's having particularly on the out-of-home market in terms of the supply chain disruption, workforce availability, and again, inflation. We know that consumers are increasingly concerned about and looking for those healthier options. Not just consumers looking for it, but also the challenge that out-of-home operators will face in terms of government initiatives trying to then force operators, food service providers, to be more accountable and providing healthier offers and choices. We know that will then take the form of legislation, whether it be around the type of food, the allergen information, recyclability, which leads into the third point in environment. Environment, not just from a legislation perspective, but we do see consumers increasingly making choices based on the sustainability accreditations or selling points of a product, but there is increasing push from government on legislation on waste and recycling. So that's where we are. All of those are challenges, but it's not all doom and gloom. With the challenges comes opportunity. We see opportunities in terms of value. The challenge from inflation, obviously people are watching what they spend. We heard a lot of that conversation already in terms of how much money people have got in their pocket, but it's not just about ensuring that you've got the right offer from a value or budget perspective. People are looking, they are conscious about the money that they spend. They've got less money in their pocket, but actually they are still willing to spend more money on products that they feel add value or deliver indulgence and reward for them. We've known about the lipstick effect or the chocolate effect. In times of challenge, people turn to small treats, but actually, particularly from a vending or automated retail perspective, ensuring that we are able to meet the demands of both people who are price conscious and looking for that value offer, but ones who are also looking and willing to spend a bit more as a treat. There is that demand, and we'll come into that later on. From technology, we've heard lots about technology already, but we are expecting as a business as Nestle to see increased demand for digital ordering platforms, mobile apps, and contactless or cashless payments. And that will blur some of the channels in terms of consumer needs being filled efficiently and effectively. We know that from a lifestyle perspective, consumers are looking for food experiences that can be personalized to them and customizable. So not ideally, obviously, consumers are looking for a personalized meal or so, but actually, how can we help deliver against that through vending and automated retail by understanding the demographics and geographies that we're working in and making sure that the offers that are available are as close to using the data that's available from our machines as well to understand what is it that is the most relevant to different types of audiences by different demographics. That means it's therefore the most inclusive offer that's available, meeting the needs of the most diverse communities. We talked about health. Consumers are looking to take more ownership of their own health, and so they're looking for offers that allow them to choose something that's more nutritious and potentially more sustainable to meet their own needs, but also the needs of the planet, which is obviously the last part around sustainability. Prioritizing consumers, we see consumers already choosing to prioritize food offers that demonstrate those eco-friendly practices, such as locally sourced ingredients, helping fight food waste, or coming with sustainable, environmentally friendly packaging. So that's the landscape that we see it as it is. When we look forward into 2025 and beyond, there are 6 key macro disruptors that we see as impacting consumers. There's 2 that will continue to remain really prevalent. We see them now and we expect them to continue. Those are sustainability and health. We see 2 areas that are gaining momentum. Those are value and rights. We see simplicity in terms of particularly data and digital continuing to influence consumers in the background. And then we see this niche area around experiences, particularly relevant to the younger consumer, but it's all about how those consumers are turning to food and drink to help manage their emotional well-being and mood boosts. So what I'm going to do is just focus on 4 of those that are most relevant to the categories that Nestle play in. We talk about sustainability. I'm sure we've all seen lots of data on it, but just to reinforce that there is a growing number of people and consumers within the UK who are increasingly active in choosing environmental or sustainable products. They are expecting manufacturers in the main to be the people that are providing that and driving that. But you'll see on the right hand side there is a growing expectation amongst consumers that governments and retailers and consumers themselves have a role to play in ensuring that the sustainable choices are available and then obviously chosen. But when we talk about sustainable options being available and chosen, we know that consumers are looking for it, but almost 2 in 3 will only choose it if it is affordable. So price still continues to be a real challenge. It needs to be affordable, it needs to be proven and trustworthy, and it needs to obviously be available. But if we look at certain categories like coffee, sustainability is important, but consumers are saying actually it's only the 7th most important reason to purchase a coffee brand. Quality and choice still come in as the top factors when consumers are deciding what coffee to purchase. And you can see on the right hand side, almost half of consumers are saying they'd actually still continue to purchase their coffee even if it wasn't ethically sourced, even though they believe it's important, because quality of offer and affordability are so key to their choice. What we are seeing at a macro scale is that consumers, manufacturers, government are all looking at sustainability, but the lens will change in 2025, and we've seen it change in 2024 from 2023, away from prevention, away from this doing no harm messaging to actually doing good. And I think we're starting to see that from many manufacturers and many of the products and services that are available, but very much focused going forward on regeneration, putting more back into the planet or the community than we take out as manufacturers and as consumers. When we look at health as one of the emerging trends, it's not, obviously we know it's been an emerging trend for a number of years, but consumers are actively seeking products that help them meet those long-term goals. And I think the interesting part is around 3/4 of consumers saying that they feel the need to take more personal responsibility for their health and well-being. So they're more actively looking to make those health conscious choices, and that is growing year on year. And they're turning to those food and drink offers that encourage healthier lifestyle choices over ones that don't. We know that there's this rise of flexitarian. Almost half of consumers and shoppers saying that they follow a flexitarian diet, so they are looking for health conscious choices. When we look at the categories of the likes of coffee that we play in, over half of consumers are saying that they are open to, or currently do, add an additional shot into their coffee drink as part of a wellness routine. So whether that be turmeric or any of the other benefits that people look for or are willing to have, you can see that's 83% amongst the 16 to 34-year-olds, so particularly high within the younger demographic, and obviously an opportunity for manufacturers and operators to capture more value from consumers if they are willing to spend more money to help on an offer that helps them meet those personal goals that they're trying to achieve. In terms of value, it's what we are seeing from consumers moving into 2025 is that we're no longer talking about just being cheap. I'm sure this has been a trend that people have seen over the years, but coming out of the periods of high inflation where actually it was all about pounds and pence in terms of how much does something cost, what we're seeing now is shoppers, and going forward into 2025, shoppers are being much more conscious about being seen as smart with their money, rather than needing to worry about every penny that they're spending. And the behaviours that we then see consumers adopting is very much around these techniques on loyalty cards. I think that was referenced in one of the earlier sessions, and turning to the value offers in out of home. Very much you'll see on the following slide, driven by where can I get a deal or a meal deal if you're looking for a food offering. It's not about finding the cheapest offer, but it's about finding one that offers good value for me as a consumer. And the last one in terms of the emerging trends for 2025 is about experiences, particularly when we look at the younger demographic. We see that 72% of younger consumers saying that they're making time in their day for small moments of joy, and actually 6 out of 10 are looking to food and drink as things that at certain times of the day help them manage their mood, give them that mood boost. So they are actively looking for those products and ensuring that we are able to provide a range of products that meet the needs of that younger demographic. They're willing to spend money on products that deliver against those needs. So ensuring that we have or can have the right offer for them. And you can see some of the examples from other product categories that we look at as to how that is being communicated to that younger generation. So when we look at those four key disruptors, the sustainability, health, value, and experiences. From a sustainability perspective, how can we be prepared? It's about, as I say, communicating, moving the communication away from preventing the bad or doing no harm, to actually doing good and putting back more into the planet and the community that we operate in than we take out. From a health perspective, about ensuring that we provide the options that support those consumers in taking more personal responsibility. And we know that customers and consumers are looking for becoming more and more demanding about having visibility of nutritional information. In terms of being value with money, making sure that we have options that not only allow people who are watching their pennies to spend that money with us, but also ensuring that we have choices that offer value for those that are willing to spend a bit more and feel that they're making a smart choice to get more value for their money. And then that portfolio to actively address the younger generation coming through who are looking to food and drink to manage their mood. I'm then going to go and talk a bit about what we then see. So that's what we see from a consumer perspective. When we then bring it down to out of home and the channels that we operate in, particularly within workplace, what do we see there, and what does the future look like? I appreciate this. There's a lot of bar charts on this graph, so not wanting for you to look at every single one of them, but just to pull out the theme for you that says, since the restrictions were lifted on COVID, which is the very far left-hand side, obviously we saw a huge growth in out-of-home spend. Those are the orange bars. So orange is out of home, spend on food and drink out of home. The red is spend on food and drink that is then taken home. So what you can see as we go across the bar chart to the end of Q1 in 2024 is that actually since March 22, the spend in food and drink has continued to grow faster out of home than it has for in-home. Out of home as a market continues to be the growth driver for food and for spend on food and drink. So we're in a good place to capture more value from our consumers. While some of that is being driven through pricing in the market, obviously we all know about inflation, the good news is that actually we are seeing volume levels recover to and go beyond those of pre-COVID levels. So not only are we capturing more value in pricing, we are seeing more volume being sold in out of home than we did pre-COVID. When we look at the channel split, workplace is the single largest channel. It's just under 1.3 billion in terms of food and beverage spend out of home. What we are expecting to see this year is mid-single digit growth in value year on year, so just over 5%. And actually, as you look forward for the next 5 years, that percentage growth doesn't really change. It's mid-single digit year on year for the next 5 years. What we are seeing is more people coming back into workplace the year on year, but actually the number of occasions that people are out of home, we're seeing more occasions out of home year on year, but we're still seeing less, 9% less out of home, consumers having 9% less occasions out of home than they did pre-COVID. But it's good that it's growing year on year. We obviously, everyone will have spoken about, heard about, seen data about hybrid working. This was some data from Kantar asking consumers about where they're working, expected number of days of commuting. The really interesting thing for me here is obviously when we talk about hybrid working, the impact that it's having, it's very much concentrated on those white collar offices. When you look at the total landscape here of consumers that work in distribution, manufacturing, across all the sectors, there's actually been very little change. Those that were working full time in their place of work pre-COVID pretty much have continued to work full time. We know that they didn't get the choice to work from home, but it's been this grouping of employees that were in the office once or twice a week pre-COVID, 10% pre-COVID. They're now up to 18%. So that's the area that has grown. It reflects that white collar workers that are choosing to spend 1 or 2 days of work, 1 or 2 days a week at work. It doesn't look like it's going to change. So a study from Work Tech that looked at the trends for the expected trends for the next 5 years, pretty much stable across fully on-site, hybrid and fully remote. Over 2,000 people questioned on there in terms of the employers, what they're expecting their employees to do. They're not expecting any change. But the good news is that what we are seeing already is that those in that group of commuting 1 to 2 days a week are actually willing to spend more money than any other group. So you can see here that they spend typically between 5 and 18% more per trip than those who are in the office either less often or more often. So this comes back to that element earlier about employees, if it's a workplace, or just consumers are willing to spend more money for an indulgent offer or a treat offer, particularly in a workplace. If they're only going in 1 or 2 days a week, they're willing to spend more money when they're there. So making sure that we've got the right range of offers that allow those that are coming 1 or 2 days a week to have that treat, spend more money, but also meeting the needs of obviously those who are on site 5 days a week or more, and are wanting to watch their pennies and pounds, and ensuring we have the offer for both. What it does mean is when we're then looking at what consumers are doing, or how they are viewing consumption within the workplace, very much moving from a practical area in 2022. That was the experience. It was a practical driver for them. In 2023 and beyond, we're seeing workplace as an area of enjoyment. So again, leading back to people willing to spend more money to meet that need of having enjoyment within the workplace. We'll come on to a bit more later on about how we see some of that manifesting in the workplace as well. But before we get there, whilst obviously seeing where people are buying lunch from when they're at work is maybe less relevant about people going to sandwich shops, McDonald's, coffee shops, I'm sure it's not a great surprise. When we look at what are the two main drivers for consumers when they're looking to purchase their lunch meals, number one is around getting a deal or being able to access a deal. So how can we ensure that our offers, whether they be from automated retailing or vending machines, provide the consumers with that opportunity to get a deal? And then the second one is that they like to access a location that's close to me. Obviously something that automated retailing and vending can very much play a really strong role in. So when we're looking at what are the areas of work that we should be focused on for operators to secure more engagement with consumers and revenue, about ensuring the range has flexibility within it. It is personalized to the greatest extent that it can be, as I talked earlier about using the data to ensure that the range reflects the demands of the location, the employees on site, the demographics, all of those. How do we make sure that the range is as personalized as possible for the consumer, that there are offers that meet the need for sustainability, and allow the offer to be as inclusive as possible. What we're actually seeing from employers, I'm sure you'll have seen many articles on this and seen it within your own business, is that actually there's two key elements that many of the places of work are looking to address at the moment, and it's productivity and employee wellness. And by doing that, they believe that business is going to attract more people back to work in greater numbers, and have a more productive business. But this element around employees seeing lunch as a more indulgent or enjoyment area links into the wider role of the workplace at the moment, which is actually 4 in 10 of the top reasons of people going to an office is actually for socializing. And we're seeing quite a significant demarcation in what people are choosing to do when they're working from home versus what they're choosing to do when they go to the office. Historically, pre-COVID, we might do a mix of everything in the office. It would be our emails, our presentations, meeting co-workers, etc. But now what we see, particularly those in the 1 to 2 days a week, is actually they are deciding to do really focused work, emails, etc. when they're at home, and when they're in the office, they're taking time to connect with colleagues, socialize, teamwork, all of those types of things. But the essence of people going into the office to socialize, and when they're then willing to treat themselves to something slightly more enjoyable and slightly more premium. We know that from business, building design companies, that actually the role of the workplace will continue, because actually it's the role of the part of these planned and unplanned interactions for employees when they're in the workplace is the reason why the physical office will continue, and why we know that many businesses are so keen to get their employees back into the workplace in greater numbers. It's because they're seeing a decline or a drop in productivity, and they believe that these planned and unplanned interactions are an essential part of what can drive or improve, bring the company's productivity back up. And actually the role that food and beverage can play is a really important part in these planned and unplanned interactions. the business owners, businesses in general are really interested in this area because the cost of not doing something to address productivity is really big. The cost of presenteeism and absenteeism in the UK workforce was 56 billion last year. And there's lots of research that proves actually where employers lean into this area and spend £1 for every £1 that they spend investing in an employee's well-being, it generates £5 in terms of a return for that business in terms of increased productivity. So productivity and employee well-being are the core elements within the business world that we are seeing and looking to address. And obviously through a food and beverage offer, that is, as I say, a key element that can help employers address these needs around employee well-being and employee productivity. An example of a company that's doing well, I know it's not linked to vending or automated retailing, but Feeder as a business, they are a food provider to workplaces, but actually really focused on having a flexible menu with diverse choices, so making it as inclusive as possible, ensuring that it can be personalized to each employee, that it uses local vendors. There's they really focus on no excess packaging, clear food labeling, hitting those sustainable credentials. The food arrives together, encouraging everyone to eat together, and then you have feedback like the bit at the bottom from businesses that are using it, that it's a relatively small thing, might seem a relatively small thing about just going out and getting lunch, but actually having people come together, whether it be over food, drink, snacks, it has such a big impact on the team and employees' well-being. We see just this from a Nestle perspective. I know a couple of these, something similar has already been mentioned, but from a Nestle perspective, we look at what else is happening across the market and across the globe. What could that look like within the space of vending and automated retailing? You've got the farmer's fridge on the far left, again, created by somebody looking to ensure that there is healthier, more locally sourced, sustainable products on offer for people. You've got I'm sure we've all seen it, the pizza vending machine. So how do you deliver good quality hot food to employees or consumers in those locations? The automated retailing fridge, but this selfie store very much focused on product management, date management as well, so that you can reduce food waste. The second from the right, my Japanese is not good enough to translate what it says on there, but this example is called the President's Treat Machine in Japan, where they've got a real focus on, or a real belief in that communication between co-workers, creating happier, more productive workplaces. And actually, if you go to a vending machine with your colleague and you buy your drink together, the company gives it to you for free. So they're encouraging people to take time out together to obviously share their ideas and have a break with a drink. The last one is how we know vending machines can be used in terms of personalization. This was actually a sampling campaign, but the premise of it being that actually the vending machine, the choice of drink was determined by questions around your mood. So tell us what mood you're feeling at the moment, or what you'd like to do to address your mood, particularly relating back to that younger audience dynamic and demand. And then we will recommend and produce a drink for you based on the questions that you've answered. So some really interesting ways that food and beverage through vending and automated retailing can respond to those changing consumer needs. What it looks like from a coffee perspective, I'm sure you'll be familiar with many of these, but just to bring out what we are looking at from a coffee category, the trends that we are seeing now and going forward. Obviously, emergence of cold, it's not emergence anymore. We know that it's now on the high street. Automated coffee machines left, right and centre are able to now do hot and cold offers. We know that flavors are not a new thing, but actually for the younger demographic, huge preference for flavored coffees. And so what do we see as the next iterations of those? If you look at Cafe Nero, the likes of pistachio latte and cherry ice latte, moving on from the traditional caramel lattes that we've seen and know that are popular at the moment. From a health perspective, the likes of turmeric lattes or decaf, we're seeing growth in decaf across the board in coffee, not just in out of home, but in home and out of home. Decaf continues to grow ahead of caffeinated coffee. And then indulgence, very much again tapping into the treat for people who are looking to spend a bit more money with their smart money, and the younger demographic who are looking for something that is not your traditional coffee offer, but a very much of an experience-based drink. Summarized, as I take one last breath, what do we see that meaning for the world of vending and automated retailing? Well, ensuring that the offers for consumers are affordable and accessible. We know that smart vending, as we saw earlier, is a growing trend. How that will then ensure that the consumers can access products, ensuring that there's products that appeal to the widest range of consumers, and that they are meeting that need for diversity and inclusion, that it's checkout free, that it's hassle free. We talked about make it as simple as possible. How do we ensure that people have confidence in the technology that they're going to use, and offering consumers the chance with those technological advancements to ensure that it is customizable, it is local, and it's friction free. So that is it from me, David.
Hello everyone, I'm Helen Hewlett and I head up the Away From Home Insights team at CCP here in GB. I'm sorry I can't be with you on the webinar today, but I'd love to share some recent research we've been curating to feed into our business planning for 2025. The CCEP European team have identified these occasions in the day that we can all tap into to drive the growth of the soft drinks category over the next 3 years. They are socialise and treat, energize and break, enjoy with food, chill break, and everyday refreshment. These growth drivers are underpinned by 3 always-on considerations of health, sustainability, and great activation, which will ensure the drivers are as effective as they can be. Socialise and treat and enjoy with food are the 2 pillars with the biggest opportunity to drive the category. But for this short session today, I've chosen to double click on energize and break, as I believe this is the pillar most relevant to this audience. To help us understand the opportunities within energize and break, we commissioned Kantar to survey consumers to find out their need states when they have a drink at different times of the day. They found out that more and more consumers need different energy boosts throughout the day as a result of our busy lifestyles. From the research, we identified 3 main occasions where drinks could fulfill consumers' daily mental and physical energy needs. They were first thing in the morning, so that is wake me up, and the breakfast occasion. The next was get me to noon. How do consumers bridge that mid-morning energy dip? And the final one we picked out is pick me up from my afternoon slump to get me through to the end of the day. Let's take wake me up first. Now, the breakfast occasion out and about did dip post-COVID as consumers were in the routine of breakfasting at home. However, we are seeing in the Lumina data the occasion starting to gain more share. The main QSR operators have picked up on this and have started to extend ranges and their trading hours to capitalise on every possible purchase opportunity. For example, McDonald's aims to boost its breakfast market share in the UK by reintroducing its popular breakfast wrap and offering in-app price cuts on several breakfast favourites to compete with Greggs. The new deal you can see here, featuring a sausage and egg McMuffin, drink and a side for $2.49, enhances that value proposition which drives growth in the morning day part for them. Similarly, Popeyes is set to disrupt the grab-and-go breakfast market with the extension of its hours for the launch of its breakfast range, which includes its signature Louisiana biscuits and Cajun spiced rolls. Breakfast is a key focus for the rapidly expanding Popeyes brand as it looks to capture the on-the-go consumers who are looking for variety. But Breakfast is also growing as a drink-only occasion. It seems that this gives us our energy boost in the morning while making the occasion even quicker and more convenient. Unsurprisingly, almost half of these drink-only occasions in the morning are coffee, and the breakfast occasion accounts for 17% of the RTD coffees, like Costa, consumption, much more than that of total soft drinks occasions. I know you would expect this presentation to concentrate primarily on cold soft drinks, but I cannot discuss non-alcoholic drinks opportunities without talking about coffee generally, and the importance of having a great offering of both coffee and soft drinks. That's because the two largest and growing sectors of non-alcoholic drinks for that drink-only occasion are coffee and soft drinks, as you can see here from Lumina data in their eating and drinking out panel. As a result, the penetration in coffee shops continues to grow. So they continue to be a key environment for us at CCEP, but also the trend is one to consider when thinking about who the competitive set is for vending. The trend of the coffee catch-up, another legacy of the pandemic, but also relevant during the cost of living crisis, of course, looks set to continue as consumers use it as an alternative to an expensive night out. Coffee can also act as an energizing break if you're on your own, or just an affordable treat in tough times. But even though coffee is going from strength to strength, the operators are not resting on their laurels. To keep things fresh, they are introducing iced drink ranges and limited edition flavors during the warmer months, tapping into consumer demand for novelty and differentiation. Cafe Nero has a new iced Americano range, presenting a more premium and indulgent option. This range includes an honey iced velvet Americano. Starbucks is introducing new matcha flavors, tapping into the growing trend for iced matcha drinks. It's also offering a twist on classic iced lattes with its iced caramel macadamia oat shaken espresso. Easy for me to say. Starbucks creme brulee inspired cream cold foam range taps into the growth of treat missions for drink occasions. And Costa's summer lineup leverages the viral TikTok trend of whipped coffee to satisfy evolving consumer preferences that being increasingly influenced by social media, as you'll know. And finally, the hot chocolate specialist Noops have launched their cocoa fruit flavoured frappe to join in with the ice trend. So because the occasion works at the moment and the operators are being really savvy with innovation, Lumina forecast a faster growth for this environment than the total eating out market. It seems like coffee will continue to be a popular and accessible way to treat ourselves, either alone or with others. So, back to our energizing break opportunities, and remember the mid-morning energy dip when people pop to the canteen for a coffee or maybe a bacon sandwich. This is actually a key opportunity for soft drinks, especially for slightly older consumers, maybe as part of breaking up their busy morning. In fact, morning breaks are where 35 to 54-year-olds will be most likely to opt for soft drinks, and this is slightly skewed towards women. So when consumers opt for soft drinks during a morning snack, the sector most popular is sports and energy, closely followed by waters and RTD coffee. So if you're looking at point of sale to drive your sales of energy drinks, morning snacks should be the focus, with these drinks accounting for 22% of our soft drink choices. And be aware that energy drinks play a larger role in the morning than in the afternoon. So what should we be looking at later in the working day? What are consumers using as their mid-afternoon pick-me-up? Well, at this time, consumers are looking for a treat to break up the afternoon, and the afternoon snack accounts for over a third of the drink-only occasions. There's quite a lot of innovation in this space, including from Greggs, who have launched their first iced drinks range, tapping into the growth of treat missions for drink occasions. Similarly, you might remember from my earlier graph that the importance of quality has led to fruit juices and smoothies gaining share at the expense of tea and water, as consumers seek more premium non-alcoholic options. Expanding soft drinks ranges and offering higher quality options can grab attention and capitalise on those current needs. Lumina research backs up this point of view, saying that more than 2/3 of people are happy to pay more for higher quality. The evidence of this can be seen in the ranges that successful new operators are offering. They include these premium options to cater to the appetite for treats. The Fleet Street Press offers a range of juices and pressed smoothies priced at £4.20, which obviously call out high quality. Joe and the Juice is known for its juices and smoothies, with health innovation a key driver of their growth, and consumers are prepared to pay almost £9 for one of their signature smoothies. And in retail, and coffee and sandwich shop operators are successfully tapping into current trends through elevating their quality propositions and offering premium ranges, helping to drive the growth of those drink-only occasions. So, to quickly sum up, it's important to recognise consumers need breaks in the day, so highlighting that in any POS material will nudge them towards a purchase. Breakfast is coming back as a key opportunity, and sometimes this is just a drink. This is the ideal time to push RTD coffee, which over-indexes here. Coffee, hot and cold, is here to stay as a pick-me-up or an opportunity to socialise. Can you challenge your suppliers to ensure the coffee quality you provide your customers is as good as the soft drinks brands they have to choose from? And finally, consumers need treats and little lifts in the day. Maybe not every day, but they might feel they deserve it when they're back in the office. Ensure these treats are available and the choices are refreshed regularly to keep consumers engaged with that occasion. I hope these insights have been useful, and please reach out to David Ridley of CCP if you have any more questions or would like us to connect further. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Helen. And that's sort of interesting, and also interesting to hear that coffee is still a dominant share of the drinks market. Certainly reflected in the US, where with it over 50% of their market is soft drinks, but increasingly largest growth area is RTD coffees of all different sorts, whether it be in cans, bottles, or cartons. And also to see that hybrid working is also going to stay with us. Now, come to the point where if anyone has any questions, we've not seen any popping up. So I hope you have found today's session useful. As I said, this has been recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. If you find it was useful, you think your colleagues will find it useful, pass it on to them, and do provide us with feedback. So on that note, I would like to say thank you for attending. Thank you very, very much to all our presenters and those who've taken part. We really appreciate the hard work that you've put in. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.